Hong Kong's #2 official Carrie Lam has tendered her resignation. This would pave the way for her to run for chief executive. Elmi Leung begins our coverage.
The secret is finally out. The Chief Secretary for Administration has tendered her resignation to run for chief executive.
There is only one reason for me to resign at this juncture, and that is if my resignation is approved by the Central People's Government, I intend to prepare to contest in the upcoming chief executive election.
She didn't explain in detail how she plans to run for CE.
I will take leave from tomorrow, and if my resignation is approved by the Central People's Government, I will find an opportunity to share with you my next steps.
Lam also thanked those she worked with in the past, but she did not answer questions from the media. A government conference Lam attended this morning may shed light on her aspirations for Hong Kong. There she repeated her focus on 8 specific areas, such as alleviating poverty, diversifying the economy, and sticking to the one country, two systems principle. Earlier, the 59-year-old rejected claims these ideas were part of her election platform. Now they might be worth revisiting, given her determination to lead Hong Kong. Under current guidelines, officials must leave office before they are eligible to run for chief executive. In Lam's absence, Secretary for Labour and Welfare Matthew Cheung will step in as the acting Chief Secretary for Administration. Also under scrutiny are Ronald Acaulay, Vice Chairman of the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority Board, and EXCO member Bernard Chan. Both are rumoured to take on key roles in Lam's campaign office. Elmi Leung, TVB News.
Well, if her resignation is approved, Carrie Lam would become the 3rd major figure to join the CE race. Caleb Long has more now on how the race is shaping up.
Ronnie Tong, convener of the political group Path of Democracy, was invited to speak at a government conference this morning. Tong said Carrie Lam was the first person to give a speech at the event. He refused to disclose the details of Lam's speech, but says the target audience was civil servants.
Carrie Lam, at the beginning of the forum, did give an hour-long speech about how she looks at the question of governance in Hong Kong. It was a rather in-depth speech, and I think explaining, in somewhat detailed terms, how she looks at what a government in Hong Kong can or should do.
Tong also said Lam is a capable official and her governing philosophy is similar to the views of Path of Democracy. Other political figures have also described what they are looking for in chief executive candidates.
And I would not so rush to get into the conclusion that anybody is a good candidate. It's up to him or her to demonstrate that that person has the capability and capacity to lead Hong Kong.
From our point of view, the CE candidate, we will look for their ability to handle well the central-local relationship, as well as to have a good balance of different sectors of Hong Kong, as well as how to make full use of Hong Kong as an international commercial center.
So far, retired Judge Wu Kwok Heng and New People's Party legislator Regina Ip have declared the intention to run for CE. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Throughout her decades-long career in government, Carrie Lam has handled a number of highly controversial issues, including political reform and, more recently, the Palace Museum proposal. Winna Wong tells us more.
Even in her youth, Carrie Lam showed enthusiasm for leadership and politics. During her days at the University of Hong Kong, she was an active member of the Social Sciences Society. Her peers at the university recalled that she took part in protests, advocating for people living on boats in the Yau Ma Tei typhoon shelter, commonly known as the Yau Ma Tei boat people. Lam joined the government after graduating in 1980, a move that set up a civil service career that lasted nearly 4 decades. Throughout her years in government, Lam made the rounds of various bureaus and departments. She rose to important ranks starting in the early 2000s, when she became director of the Social Welfare Department, and later permanent secretary for Housing, Planning and Lands, and permanent secretary for Home Affairs. Lam took up the post of Secretary for Development in 2007 and became one of the principal officials. During her time in office, she dealt with a number of highly controversial issues. The government's decision to demolish Queen's Pier in Central faced fierce opposition from conservationists. Lam dominated headlines again when she pushed for a crackdown on illegal structures, a rampant problem among village houses in the new territories. But many new territories' residents were against the move. In 2012, Lam was named Chief Secretary for Administration, becoming the second woman to take that job in the city's history. She was also in charge of the Commission on Poverty. Under her leadership, the commission rolled out a number of schemes and subsidies for the city's poor.
Cherish this opportunity.
But Lam's career-defining moment came when she was appointed to lead political reform. The SAR government came up with a proposal in line with the so-called 831 framework unveiled by Beijing. And that sparked the 2014 Occupy Central protests. A key moment of the movement was when she and several other government officials sat down with student leaders in October. But that landmark meeting failed to end the standoff, and the protests would continue for 2 more months. The reform bill was voted down in the Legislative Council in 2015. More recently, Lam found herself in hot water again over her handling of a plan to build a Hong Kong version of the Palace Museum. Critics were unhappy with what they see as her heavy-handed approach, accusing her of making important decisions without consulting the public. Wenna Wang, TVB News.